The finale opens with Hal pretending to be sick and says they should sleep in separate rooms. He brings up Callum, the British intelligence officer who's clearly still got a hold on Kate, and jokes that maybe she'll sneak him in now that she's got her own room. Hal tries to act chill about her new man possibly being part of her future, but she knows he's still jealous. Grace and Todd are on a different kind of collision course. Todd finds a blog post calling Grace the president and her beau. He points out that she doesn't laugh much anymore, not since becoming president, and says the only time she seems happy is around her vice president Hal. Grace immediately calls him out for being jealous. Their marriage is cracking under the same kind of stress as Kate and Hal's. The real crisis hits when Grace tells Prime Minister Trowbridge that the disabled Russian submarine off his coast isn't just another wreck. It's carrying Poseidon, a nuclear-powered underwater drone capable of wiping out entire coastlines. Trowbridge doesn't buy it. He thinks it's Russian propaganda and calls her bluff. Grace insists it's real, but he walks out, leaving the Americans desperate to prove the threat exists before someone else, namely China, gets involved. Kate finds out through Dennison and can't believe Trowbridge would think Grace's entire visit is some elaborate lie. Hal calls it political theater, but Kate suspects there is more to it, that maybe Trowbridge's denial is part of a bigger play for leverage. They debate bringing in the British station chief Edra, but Hal says the PM only listens to men. So Kate turns to Callum, asking him to quietly confirm Poseidon's existence. He warns her that revealing his source would get people killed. Still, he can tell she's desperate. Later during the dinner, Callum finds Kate and says he'll do it. He'll tell Trowbridge the Russians told him about Poseidon. Kate tells him he doesn't have to, but he insists. She promises the US will do everything possible to protect him and his source, and she hugs him. That night, Dennison shocks everyone by introducing his new wife, Temo. Later, Kate congratulates him again, but then Dennison reveals that his first wife died by suicide. Kate apologizes and clearly feels for him. As he leaves, Dennison tells her to be patient with herself and with Hal. Meanwhile, Billy and Stuart's relationship implodes over secrets from the previous administration. Stuart feels betrayed when Billy admits she knew the truth about the cover-up that killed 40 soldiers. The tension between them becomes almost unbearable. Later, Adra finds Stuart alone, clearly on the edge of quitting. He tells her he's done selling lies about peace and democracy, calling it all BS. Adra doesn't sugarcoat the fallout. If he resigns, they'll destroy him. She warns him that people who walk away from this job often don't make it. Finally, after all the dancing around, she admits she wants him to stay and they kiss. At the same time, Hal and Kate's argument over Callum explodes. Hal loses it when he finds out Kate asked Callum to expose himself to the Prime Minister. He says burning Callum is a terrible idea because the guy's a direct link not only to the UK but also to Russia. Kate insists it's the only move they have. Hal accuses her of enjoying the drama of being emotionally attached to a man who's about to ruin his career for her. Kate fires back that she's trying to save the world, not flirt her way through a crisis. Kate eventually pitches a desperate plan to Grace: send an American submarine into British waters to photograph the Russian one. Grace says absolutely not, that's an act of war, but Hal later finds a way to spin it so she'll say yes. By the next morning, the plan's in motion. When Grace sits down with Trowbridge again, she's got proof. Real photos of the Russian sub and the Poseidon weapon. She admits she sent a US underwater drone into British territory to take them, an illegal move that could easily trigger an international crisis. Trowbridge is stunned. Grace tells him she risked everything to prove her sincerity, and that the real danger isn't her, it's what's sitting under his coastline. She confesses that the trust between their countries is gone, and that's on America. But instead of accepting her gesture, Trowbridge accuses her of trying to manipulate him with fake evidence. Grace pushes back, warning that he's on his last no before facing the consequences alone. As tensions rise, Hal whispers to Kate about Ruined Dome, a nuclear containment site buried under concrete in the Marshall Islands. Hal says Trowbridge doesn't trust him, so Kate steps up and tells the PM directly. Bury the weapon just like Ruined Dome. She says no country should have that kind of power. Not Russia, not China, not even them. For once, Trowbridge agrees and shakes hands with Grace. After the peace deal, Kate decides to head back to DC to make sure everyone stays aligned. She breaks down crying in front of Hal, apologizing for everything. The lies, the fights, all of it. Hal hugs her and says they're still here, still together, trying to believe it's true. They kiss, clinging to a moment of peace that feels like it might actually last. But of course it doesn't. Callum finds Kate before she leaves and drops the bomb. The Russians found the sub and took the Poseidon. Radiation levels dropped by 62%, which only makes sense if the weapon's gone. He tells her to stay quiet until they can confirm it. She promises she will, but when she steps outside, she tells Hal immediately. Todd tells Kate if Grace and Hal's productive working relationship bothers her, but Kate says no. Todd adds that Grace swore it wasn't intimacy, it was just a quiet plotting of world domination. Hearing this, Kate realizes something. She confronts Hal, asking if he and Grace were behind it, if the US secretly took the Poseidon before anyone else could. She reminds him that Grace said she sent a drone, but the mission actually involved an Ohio-class submarine big enough to carry the weapon. Hal tries to deflect, saying it's classified. Kate warns him that if this gets out, it will look like Britain stole the weapon, and Russia will retaliate. Hal cuts her off and orders her not to tell anyone, and that's when it hits her. Hal and Grace really did it. They stole the Poseidon and lied to everyone. Hal walks off to join Grace for the photo op. She smiles and asks if everything's okay. He quietly replies, not entirely. When she presses him, he explains that Kate knows. Grace keeps smiling for the cameras while Kate stands off to the side, realizing she's been used to sell a cover story for a nuclear heist. Todd wonders if there is nothing to worry about, but Kate can't even respond. She just stares at Grace and Hal, the two most powerful people in the world, standing shoulder to shoulder, smiling through a lie that could start World War III.